Hey everyone, what's up? Happy New Year 2022. Right? 2022. Yeah. Yeah, I still got the finger thing going on, man. Again, promise not to give people directions because they drive right off the road when I point which way to go. But I'm getting along with it. It's rocking. Anyways, it's bass time, non-fish. What I want to show you today is the new BC2XL Suncoast pedal. Really very cool pedal. Let me get that straight. How about that? Okay, so dig the features on this puppy. Where I was going with it is you have effects loops on this, 3 of them. You have a main loop, a channel 2 and a channel 1 loop, of course output and input, and I'm trying to read backwards. But anyways, and a DI out. So what's really cool is you have it all in one box with a limiter. So what's nice about this limiter, I mean, you could use compression and whatnot, you know, in your pedal chain, but this limiter is really nice to kick in. It'll just kind of chop the top or protect your speakers or not kill the sound guy out front. It's a really nice little piece, and it's quite musical. So if you kind of really dial it in, you get some kind of like a somewhat real nice compressed tone mixing, especially if you're trying to blend like clean and distortion. So the specs on it, it's solid state. It's dual channel, obviously, as I said, but you can combine the channels. So when you hit the combine switch, it'll turn on the next channel that isn't on, or vice versa. So if you're on one and you hit combine, 2 will come on. And if you hit the switch, the channel switch itself, it'll flip to the other channel and it'll combine the other way. And you also have a bypass. The EQ is active, plus or minus 20 on the bass, mid, and treble, and it's got a sweepable mid-range, as you can see there on the pedal. The balanced output also has a ground lift, so that cuts out any crazy issues, you know, with PAs and whatnot. But in this next part, I'll show you some other ideas that I came up with using this pedal for recording, which worked really cool. Okay, so here's a cool experiment I tried with the BC2XL. With those effects loops out, the signal flow I discussed with Jim on the phone one day, I said, hey, I got an idea. What happens, you know, what do we have for where they're coming out? So what's happening is volume out is before the loop, comes back, goes back into the limiter, and then out your 1/4 inch and the DI. But if you take a 1/4 inch cable and you put it straight into, say, one of the loops, or both rather, which is where I'm going with this. Take 1/4 inch cable out of each loop. You're going to go straight into your DAW. So now recording, when I was doing like a clean and distortion mix on these channels, and of course you still have volume control coming out of the loops. What happens is, like I said, it's cutting off the 1/4 inch and the XLR out and the bypass and the limiter. So you're just picking up right after the volume controls, going into your DAW. But now, when you're mixing your song or whatever you're doing in the DAW, you can actually now separate the channels and clean them up and do whatever. Because what I found sometimes when you record with a clean and distortion mix already, and you go one output, you get your signal in there, and then you're trying to add a little more or something between your clean and distortion sound. So what I really like about this, kind of like how the BC3XL works, that you could split channels and all that, but only for recording idea on this, because you're losing your other outputs. So you're not going to get monitor out for your amp. You'll have to monitor through your DAW and run your DAW like in a low latency. But the other idea I had was, if you take your effects loops, right, and we go channel 1 and channel 2 as intended, and these are big clunky cables I got kicking around. I'll put up on the screen. I made some custom tip ring sleeve cables with low profile jacks and right angles. I'll show you those because I'm in the middle of a pedal board build using a BC2XL. But the idea I had was, if you have a sound person that you can trust at the board, I would take a DI and loop in and out of 2 DIs. That way you could separate these 2 channels straight to the board. Now, with them being an effects loop, the DI is going to return the output back, and then you can still have your output, your limiter, and even the XLR, so you could really get nuts at the board and have a full mixed pedal or separate DIs on that. So technically you'd be running 3 DIs. Now, as a pro sound guy in the field from years myself, I know how this will work. For other people, it might be quite of a lab experiment, but I think it's a really neat idea. Real quick, getting back to the 2DI idea, you know, you really got to be set up and have a good sound person. I would recommend, you know, out at the front of house that can kind of deal with all that, that can ride the faders, you know, really when they're mixing the band. And you got to be careful with things like ground loops or problems. You know, it's more stuff in a signal chain. But I would, boy, if my band had a full-time sound engineer out front, the whole production, like the old days, I'd probably do that. And it's kind of like what I used to do for bands myself. I was their one sound guy to run their mix every night, night after night, with some of the bands I worked with. So I could do that and know, you know, what each person needs or whatever, you know, things like that would work really neat. But it's there. The trick is there. And for the recording, I think that's a really neat idea. You could really split it, because I found myself recording with my clean and distortion mix, and I'll go back and what sounds great out of my amp and live, and then when I put it into a DAW, I'm like, geez, you know, it needs a little different EQing for the recording, and I'm running a pretty good Motu interface and digital performer. Anyways, so coming up in the next part here, I'm going to show you the pedal board I'm putting this BC2XL on. It's not finished yet, but I made some really nice cables for the inserts for this person, and what they'll be able to do is they're long enough to put any of the pedals in any of the effects loops, so I made them longer. Okay, so I'm just going to hold it up to the camera. So it's a pedal board in build. He bought some really cool stuff. I haven't even tried half of these things out. I do like this. I checked out the this MXR. What is it? The new bass octave. This thing tracks really nice. I haven't played with any of these other toys yet. He's going to try running a compressor in the front and a tuner. The Suncoast BC2XL is going to live up here, right up on the top corner. That way the DI can come out. And now, where I was talking is on the cables I made, you could see that I ran them along the bottom. And what I'm doing here is they're all ready to go. Now, obviously, I just tied them all the way to the end. But what I'm going to do for him, or what he can do later, is he can just cut the tie wraps and pull back the pair and go back to any of the pedals. So if he wants to use a loop, he can plug it in and then bring it over to a pedal and put one specific pedal or loop between the two. So I made them extra long for him, and they're there on the board. And at the end, and I'll show you real quick, I'll just throw the pedal on here, how it's going to set up. I had some tape on here because I was trying to figure out where I wanted everything. So if we were to run everything, loop, main loop, channel 2 loop, channel 1 loop. So now they're ready to go right there, and all set up. Now the cool thing about the loops, if you have a problem with a pedal that's in a loop, just unplug it. So if you're playing a gig and you got a pedal that's giving you some kind of problem, this is what I like about this setup is instead of everything loop, 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 loop all the way through and you got a pedal in between somewhere giving you a problem or a bad cable, what's really neat about this is if it is being used in an effects loop and something goes weird with the pedal, again, pull it out. Pull them all out if you really are troubleshooting. That's something we always do in the sound business. Start pulling things out of the inserts if you can and run straight through. So now you're you know, depending, you know, obviously we're going to go in, he's going to go in his compressor, tuner, compressor, but you're eliminating any of these other problems. So I think that was kind of a neat idea. And if he doesn't want to use them at all, we could just tie wrap them off on the side and he has them ready to go for this particular preamp. So I think they're nice to have there and extra long, like I was saying. I still got to wire it. I had a one spot power supply kicking around that I'm going to sell to him, and it's a really good piece. I didn't need it anymore. I had to go to something different because I'm using a really crazy setup back there, as you can see. But it's going to be a really nice little pedal board. And again, you could just go back to your basics. Unplug everything, run straight out of your pedal. And if all else fails, you can just stay right on the DI out. You know what I mean? You could just hit bypass, everything's out, straight through, you're getting through your gig. Because, you know, you plug in all these pedals and any kind of craziness can happen, as you know, out there. So that's the pedal board that is in progress of being built. Should be done soon. Well, that's it for now on Bass Time Non-Fish here. So hit subscribe, hit like, you know, just don't hit anybody. It's just not cool. But yeah, let's keep rocking. And I really like, you know, one more thing, thought on this pedal. It's definitely a lot more punchy than the previous BC2. He really reworked this thing, and especially adding those loops. I think it's a really nice piece. When I plugged it in, man, it just sang right away. So it's definitely worth checking out. It's a whole different animal from the BC2XL sound. I mean, you could still get your distortions and cleans and whatnot, but it's definitely got a different circuitry layout, as you can see in the specs. But yeah, that's it. Keep rocking, and remember, no fish were injured during this. Anyways, that's it. I'm Mike, signing off. See ya.